This video is specifically geared to hammer handles and how I shape them. This is an area that I think is extremely important to blacksmithing in particular, and it's usually a subject that gets overlooked or barely considered at all. But the hammer handle is the connection between the hammer head and your hand. So the shape of it is vital. It doesn't really matter how the hammerhead is shaped or how it's forged or how expensive the steel is. If the hammer handle isn't shaped properly, a lot of the energy that you're trying to drive into the metal is also going to be driven right up your arm. And that amount of jarring several hours a day over several years will definitely cause problems. The main problem is that hammers are no longer made to be used. With the exception of some higher-end carpenter's hammers and framing hammers, you can no longer walk into a hardware store and buy a hammer off the rack and go into the shop and start using it. Hammer handles are no longer designed to protect the user from injury. They're basically designed to not break while they're being subjected to all the crap that normally goes on a normal job site. At one time, hammer handles were flexible, and the manufacturers understood that they needed to be flexible to protect your arm from injury. So this long, thin section between the hammer head and the actual hammer handle is in fact a spring. It's a shock absorber that's there to dampen all of the vibration that gets created from constant hammering. The hammer on the right is the first forging hammer that I ever bought, and I purchased it in about 1975 or 76. It was just a common hardware store item. There wasn't anything special about it, but it still followed that old tradition of hammer making. It's a very small handle, and it has a long, slender transition between the part where you're actually hanging onto the handle and the hammer head. I haven't modified this handle in any way. This is exactly how I brought it home from the hardware store 40 years ago, and I've been using it ever since. Now, if you compare this to a modern hammer handle, you can really start to see the differences. This is basically just a club. Whatever's going on in the hammer head is being telegraphed right up your arm. This isn't going to cause you any problems if you're just using it a few times a week to drive stakes in the ground or something, but you cannot use this as a forging hammer. There is absolutely no flexibility in this handle. The transition from the heavy part of the handle to the hammerhead is barely noticeable. I don't even know why they bother. It's more decorative than anything. Here I'm just using a pair of calipers to illustrate how different the dimensions are from one hammer handle to the next. You can see here where the dimension from the thinnest part of the modern hammer handle falls on the older hammer. And the handle doesn't return to this size until you get right up to the hammer head. So the hammer handle between these 2 points is really thin and flexible. And the other side of the hammer handle shows the same difference in thickness. Now, the other main difference between the modern hammer handles and the older style hammers is the shape of the grip. In modern hammers, they tend to be more of a rounded oval, and the older style handles tended to have flatter sides, which I find make them easier to grip. Now, that is personal preference. There are no health risks as a result of either approach, so you'll have to decide how you want that on your own hammers. Just try them out, see which one works better for you. This is my main forging hammer when I need to do heavy work. It's a 4-pound sledge. It was bought at a hardware store, but I've heavily modified the handle. I've thinned down the neck of the handle almost to half of its original size, and I made that gradual transition that was common in older hammers. I was developing tendonitis at a time when I was using this hammer a lot. Part of the reason was my hammer technique, and I discussed that in an earlier video, but the other reason was the shape of the handle. And I decided at that point that I was going to start playing around with the hammer handles, and I just kept shaving it down until I got to this point. So by changing my hammer technique and radically changing the shape of my hammer handles, I was able to continue working while the tendonitis basically went away. My reasoning was it was cheaper to go out and buy another hammer handle if I had shaved it too thin and it broke than to be off work because I couldn't hammer. But it never happened. I've been using these hammers for well over 30 years now, and not one of them has given me any problems, and I have never broken one. So if you think you're starting to develop problems from hammering, then I would strongly suggest that you have a good look at your hammer handles and see if they conform to the old standard. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you like this video, by all means give it a thumbs up. If you want to support this channel, you have a couple of options to do that. The first thing, of course, is to just subscribe. Second, if you have ideas or photographs of things you'd like to see on this channel, send them along. I'll turn them into a video. If you want to lend your financial support to this channel, you have a couple of options there. You can go to my channel homepage and click on the options that you see in the banner. So thank you for your support, and with your help, I'll be doing this for some time to come. We'll see you next time.